West to Sharknado 3
to the Gipper, Lenny and Squiggy, John Travolta, Chris Christie.
Oh, yes, baby!
Whoa. With all due respect to Hillary Clinton,
to Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders,
Donald Trump. Thanks, guys. We'll take it from here.
These are their stories.
So am I supposed to say something?
We'll take it from here, Lindsay. Tonight, a toast in our shared raised cocktail glasses, equal parts sappy and semi-sober, with a twist of Joel Benenson, hold the blue cheese olives. Most things, even the good ones in life, are ephemeral. And so this evening, we conclude what has been a very memorable, very sleep-deprived, and at times hastily assembled, roughly 2 years of this program, with all due respect. We've got a very special show planned for you tonight with some very special and some very familiar guests. In the words of the greatest American poet and philosopher, Taylor Swift, I'm dying to see how this one ends. But before we get to the emotional end, let's start with some news and our final check-in on Donald Trump's admin building efforts. Last night, during Trump's debut thank you rally in Cincinnati, the president-elect let slip that he will be tapping retired Marine General James Mad Dog Mattis as his defense secretary. Today, Trump's team also announced a February forum at the White House of business advisors that's going to include some of the titans of the American corporate world, including the Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman, J.P. Morgan Chase topper Jamie Dimon, General Motors CEO Mary Barra, and my former boss and the main man at the Walt Disney Company, Bob Iger. John, this list of business advisors is, to many, as surprising as it is impressive. What do you make of the corporate giants signing up to help the next president?
We have been having a discussion in our world of politics and media ever since Donald Trump got elected about the question of normalizing Donald Trump. He was an abnormal candidate in a lot of ways and violated a lot of democratic norms and a lot of traditions, and a lot of established ways of doing things. This is, it was inevitable if he won that there would be capitulation on the part of a lot of establishmentarians who had fought him before. But this group, many Republicans, some Democrats, this is a sign that the normalization is not complete, because Donald Trump is still abnormal in a lot of ways and should be treated as such. But a lot of people in the business world, a lot of people in the political world are like, this is it, man, he's the president-elect, and we can hold him accountable in various ways, but he's going to be treated like a president, a normal president.
You can say it's inevitable, but I have to say, it wasn't that long ago, 5-6 months ago, when he would talk about certain people who might serve in his cabinet, and they would tell people quietly, I'm not serving in that guy's cabinet.
Are you nuts, right?
I am surprised, not just at the recruitment of Mattis, who many people in the establishment are wildly enthusiastic about, but the recruitment of this group, even though it's just an advisory meeting, is to me, I won't say stunning, because it takes a lot to stun me, but this surprises me a great deal that some of these people are putting their names now to the kickoff of the administration. Well, they'll be in the midst of the legislative agenda, and presumably a lot of them will endorse the Trump agenda.
Here's why I'm not surprised in the end, that ideals, and I say this with some regret and some ruefulness, but ideals, political positions, ideology, all that stuff, for corporate leaders, in the end, it's about the bottom line. For political leaders, in the end, it's about power. And this guy is going to be president, and a lot of them are like, I can sit at a cocktail party or at a dinner party and complain about him and say he's not fit for office, but in the end, his policy decisions are going to affect my company's bottom line.
And
his decisions in Washington are going to affect the power dynamics.
The president-elect has invited me, and I'm flattered, and I'll go. And
well, or if they're not, even if whether they're flattered or not, I'm not going to give the middle finger to a guy who's going to be setting tax policy in the country.
I have a big influence on my respect for a lot of people on this list is quite high, including Bob Iger, I'll say. And the fact that they're willing to put their brand next to the first month of the Trump administration is, I'll say again, it's pretty surprising to me. I get everything you're saying, but I'll just say in some visceral way, this, as much as anything that's happened since he's been elected, says to me he's got a chance to balance the abnormal and the totally different with the conventional. This could not be a more conventional thing for a president-elect to do, to invite this group of people to the White House in the beginning.
There are going to be millions of Americans who continue to believe that Donald Trump is not really their president, and will proudly carry the banner, not my president, not legitimate, not going to accept him. But in the realm of corporate America and in the halls of Congress, those people, many of whom trashed Donald Trump 6 months ago, they're now acceding to the reality of it and trying to make peace with it to the best they can. All right, there is at least one group, like the one that I was just talking about, that's not quite ready to accept a Trump presidency, and that would be the members of Hillary Clinton's inner circle and her campaign who took part in a Harvard Institute of Politics forum earlier this week. It is a tradition every 4 years. Campaign strategists gather in Cambridge to hash out a first draft of election history. This year's event started with moderator Andrea Mitchell welcoming Trump and Clinton operatives in the, quote, spirit of reconciliation. By the end, both sides had completely lost their cool. Exhibit 1, this biting exchange between Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway and Clinton comms director Jennifer Palmieri.
If providing a platform for white supremacists makes me a brilliant tactician, I am glad to have lost. And one of Hillary, give me a minute, David. When I am more proud of Hillary Clinton's all right speech than any other moment on the campaign, because she had the courage to stand up. I would rather lose than win the way you guys did.
Do you think I ran a campaign where white supremacists had a platform? You going to look me in the face and tell me that?
It did. Kellyanne
really?
did.
And that's how you lost?
It did.
Do you think you could have just had a decent message for the white working class voters?
We are going to have our dollop of campaign reflections from Clinton senior strategist Joel Benenson, who was at that event up in Cambridge and will be with us in just a moment. But first, Clinton's team has been criticized for seeming not to fully grasp the reasons that their candidate came up short in the election. Mark, from what you heard at Harvard, on a scale from 1 to Godzilla, yeah, there he is. On a scale from 1 to Godzilla, how much is the Clinton campaign still in denial about Hillary Clinton's loss?
Well, if you take their public statements, you'd say it'd begin close to Godzilla. But the fact is, it's a 3. They can't blame their candidate. They don't want to blame each other publicly. Behind the scenes, though, there's a much greater recognition of the things that went wrong. But I will say, I thought that the tone of that thing was horrible. A lot of people that I've known for a long time on both sides in respect, I did not like to see what it escalated to. But the reality is, if you lose a race by that few votes, you can point to 1,000 things. They're pointing to the ones that are the politically and personally safest places to be. I don't think they're saying things that are wrong, but I do think publicly they're not giving anything like a complete explanation, starting with the performance, as Kellyanne Conway said, of the Democratic candidate.
I've been to a lot of those Harvard events, and the first one I ever went to in my life was in 1988 when I was a graduate student at the Kennedy School of Government, and I was able to come and watch. And it was after that campaign where the Bush campaign, George Herbert Walker Bush's campaign, had run a terrible negative campaign to destroy Mike Dukakis. And the passions were like this. It was the only time I've ever seen it before. Susan Estrich on one side, Roger Ailes on the other side, Lee Atwater, who are screaming at each other with this kind of emotion. There's occasionally you get a campaign like that, where one side feels not only like they lost surprisingly, as was the case with Dukakis, who thought he had their campaign, thought they had the election in the bag for many months, but lost in a way where they felt like the other side played, like, colored way outside the lines and ran a nasty, dirty, unprecedentedly horrible campaign. So the emotions are just very close to the surface here. I think that give everybody, both sides, the Trump people who are spiking the football in an unpleasant way, the Clinton people who are still obviously emotional and overwrought about it, give them all a little time. I don't think it's about denial. It's just about the fact that the emotions are still so close to the surface. People need a little more time to get to a proper understanding of what took place.
And the comparison's apt because the Dukakis people felt the Bush people won in an illegitimate way, as you said, outside the
all
lines.
That stuff, yeah.
And in this case, the passion within the Clinton campaign of saying there were dog whistles, there were inappropriate appeals, there were things well over the line, is pretty heartfelt. But as I said, over time, I think we'll learn that they see in a more 360-degree way the other factors that played a role here, including some divisions within the campaign about how they should have campaigned.
But here's the thing I don't think will go away. I think that Jennifer Palmieri, Robbie Mook, Joel Benenson, John Podesta, I think they will still think that Donald Trump ran a racist campaign. They'll still think that they provided a platform for anti-Semitism, for a white nationalism.
Till the day
and I think they'll be right about all those things. But they will better understand their failures. In addition to, I think they'll maintain that consistency, but I think they will better understand the things they did wrong than they do today.
Can you imagine what it would have been like if Steve Bannon had showed up?
Oh.
Okay, up next,
Fistfights.
Clinton strategist Joel Benenson is here on this set for a final farewell exit interview after these words from our fabled sponsors.
Listen, you guys won. That's clear. You won the Electoral College. That's the currency.
That was
Let's
the fight,
also
right?
be honest. Don't act as if you have some popular mandate for your message. 2.5 million more Americans thought she was a better candidate.
I just want to go back to the 270 or the 306 that we won, because that's how you win the presidency, and we did it.
That was a bit more from the campaign strategist battle royale at Harvard's Institute of Politics earlier this week. We, here at With All Due Respect, could not think of a better newsmaker to come in and make some headline-scorching news on our final show than the man from Queens who never backs down from a verbal brawl. Of course, we're talking about Hillary Clinton, senior campaign strategist and pollster Joel Benenson. Joel, great to see you. Here's my biggest question, which does not relate to your argument over mandate, but relates to this. You were involved in Barack Obama's campaign in 2008 and 2012. In both instances, that campaign was extraordinarily accurate about what was going to happen on Election Day and the days beforehand. In this election, you guys were really not close to accurate across a wide variety of states. What caused you guys to get it so wrong?
I think it's a tough question. I think it was always a bit of a volatile electorate. I think that we saw things consolidating after the third debate. We always had the third-party candidate, which was a big difference between the previous two elections. And one thing that surprised me throughout the fall, particularly post-convention, I've been in races with third-party candidates, you see them start to drift off, especially as you get into September and late September. It was staying between 8 and 11%. And that's a variable that's very hard to control and very hard to account for as you get closer to Election Day. So we always were looking at groups of defectors, because we always asked the two-way question first and the four-way. And there was a point, and we think, I'm pretty certain from our data, that one of the things that happened was 11 days out when Jim Comey made his announcement and put the email issue back into play against all FBI precedents. We saw Trump's defectors consolidate, and ours, who had been coming to us post-third debate, kind of stopped. It was like a wall went up, and they drifted away after that again. And that was a big chunk. When you look at the numbers, you can see a clear dividing line by age on who voted third party, who stayed in the third party lane, and who didn't. They were our defectors.
And just to follow on that, do you believe that Comey's second announcement on the Sunday before election, did that help Trump? Or
help Trump?
Yeah.
Yes. I think any time Comey spoke at that point helped Trump.
Even though he was exonerated?
Absolutely. I think it puts the issue back out there again. He was leveraging it, slamming it up against the wall with his tennis racket, playing, squash, if you will, with nobody else on the court because of that. So,
just to be clear, in case you didn't have time to watch me talk about this over the last couple of months, I think what Comey did was one of the most outrageous things in American history, really inappropriate. So, stipulate
throughout, starting in July.
Stipulate we agree on that.
I agree with that too, by the way, which gets glossed over a lot.
Yeah. Although you guys praised him at the time. You did.
Yeah.
You did.
We did because you got to
extent.
realize it's after 15 months, right?
Yeah.
And then but
it could have been a mistake to embrace him, right?
No, I think that. Look, we're talking about FBI procedures and what a prosecutor should or shouldn't say when they do not have a case to prosecute.
What could you have done differently to perhaps head off the problem, or nothing?
What's happening is momentum stops. Our leads tighten up in states, right? We still believe by Election Day we can win this thing, right? The variable there is what happens with third-party voters and undecideds. And at the end of the day, we're now looking at across 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, 70,000 votes is what makes the difference between Hillary Clinton being president-elect and Donald Trump being president-elect. And in the last 11 days, to have to be dealing with that under any circumstances was probably
suboptimal.
Too big a hill to climb, obviously.
Wisconsin has been pointed to by a number of people, a state that she never visited throughout the entire general election, and yet you lost it, right? I mean, presumably your sophisticated data operations should have known earlier that this was potentially vulnerable. That seems to me like malpractice to lose a state that was a battleground state and have never sent your candidate there. No?
Well, look, it's easy to, with 20/20 hindsight, say, well, that should be malpractice to me. You're making judgments based on your data, based on how close you think it is, and based on how much time you have left. Look, we went to states like Pennsylvania at the end. We went to North Carolina at the end.
You went to places like Arizona where that ended up not being close. You talked about Missouri. You talked about all these.
We did not go to Missouri.
But you were spending money in Missouri. You spent money in Georgia. You spent money in states that were blowouts.
The only 2 states we really considered going into were Georgia and Arizona. And when you talk about Georgia, we lost Georgia by 6 points. If you look at that map and say, we lose Georgia by 6 points and we don't win Wisconsin, you'd say, what's going on here? There's a massive disconnect. I'm looking at that going, what happened here?
On questions of members of the Obama coalition, particularly non-white voters, you guys put a lot of faith in President Obama's ability, especially with African-American voters. Since the election, we've had a variety of black people here, speakers, talkers, guests on the show, who've said that they thought Obama's strategy of basically saying to African Americans, I'll take this personally if you don't vote for me, was a mistake, and that it didn't help. And in fact, not only did it not help, it was kind of condescending and may have hurt. Do you accept now that that might be true? Is there any way in which you look back and think maybe the reliance on the Obamas to try to help with those members of the coalition that Obama built was the wrong strategy?
It's a close call. You have both, it's like yesterday we started the conversation off by talking about strengths and weaknesses. And I think when you have things that are advantages, can they become a disadvantage at a certain point, or do you overplay a hand with them? I think that's, like I said, one of the multitudes of things you could look at where the value of these folks was clear. Running against somebody who's got Republicans publicly walking away from him, denouncing him, saying basically our message. And we have kind of 2 highly liked former president, a current president, first lady, et cetera. So, it's hard to sit here today and say, did we overuse them? Did we not use it strategically? I think, in hindsight, looking back at the schedule is something everybody's probably poring over right now and saying, should we have done something differently? But that's not going to change anything that happened on November 8th. So where does it get us?
How is the Clinton political family, not the Clintons themselves, but you and your colleagues, how are you dealing with what had happened?
You mean losing?
Yeah, losing to someone who
Donald Trump.
Losing to someone who all the people in your campaign talked about it being an apocalyptic.
I think on Look, I think there's a bigger question here about what President-elect Trump means for the country going forward. I think there's going to be a lot of very high bars and high tests that he's going to have to clear and demonstrate.
I'm asking you on a human level.
No,
you all built up the stakes.
The most gratifying races to win, like on their side, are close races that no one expects you to win. The hardest ones when you lose are the ones when everyone expects you to win and it's close and you lose it close, because you're always going to pick over it and say, like you guys are doing right now, what the hell could we have done differently? Look, we can pour over this for as long as we want, but, you know, we've got to go on and go to the next step. And as I said to a lot of people in campaign headquarters the day after Election Day, you know what? You got to hold your head up and we got to go out because we live to fight another day.
Joel, we want to continue this conversation. Will you come back on Monday? Oh, wait, we're actually not on the air on Monday.
In that case, I will definitely be back on Monday.
Well, you'll be the first guest on this show after it's off the air. You're one of the great guests in the history of the show. Thank you for doing today.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be right back with a Hall of Fame of, with all due respect, guests right after this.
Our next guest tonight is 5 guests tonight, all BFFs of this program. On our couch, the co-founder of the 74million.org, a past guest co-host of the program, the Campbell Brown, the former Romney and current Paul Ryan advisor, and the reigning Jeopardy champion.
Thank you.
It's
not nothing.
It's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
It's more than nothing.
Yeah.
And it would not be a Senor Jr. block without Harold Ford Jr., the former U.S. Congressman from Tennessee, back when Tennessee elected lots of Democrats to Congress, and an MSNBC political analyst, and from the City of Angels, Republican strategist, the former director of Jeb Bush's super PAC, Right to Rise, Mike Murphy, and a man who always has a right to rise on this program, Democrat Bob Shrum. Thank you all for coming. All right, we're doing a rapid round here on our last program, starting with a question. Campbell, what was the seminal moment of 2016 in Clinton versus Trump?
The seminal moment of Clinton versus Trump. I was going to say the whole campaign was the moment when it became clear to everyone that he was actually going to be the nominee. It was like we were in this fog. Yeah, I think people in the media, I think elites, I think the pontificators never really thought it was going to happen. And I think we felt that way really through the very end of the campaign. I mean, very obviously. And it was, you know, if there was a seminal moment, it was election night when it finally smacked everybody in the face that this is real.
Dan, what was the seminal moment?
I think the
Don't disagree with your wife.
I'm not going to. I'm going to choose one that I know she would agree with.
Yeah.
The Access Hollywood tape was a seminal moment. And it was a seminal moment because I think it lodged the Clinton campaign to a false sense of complacency. They at that moment they thought he's doomed. They sort of delegitimized the idea of him as commander-in-chief. And then they were talking about Georgia and Utah and playing in Arizona. And it was all about expanding the map. And they completely ignored the core, their base. And if you look at, they just lost about 100,000 votes in 3 states.
That's a good answer.
Well, is there any way in which it was seminal in that it revealed the current president-elect to be a sexual predator?
He revealed that earlier. I mean, I think that was.
I'm saying in terms of the impact it had. I think it changed the strategy of one of the campaigns and led to them ignoring something that was.
Good answer. Bob Strum, what was your seminal moment?
I think there were two, and they're really related to each other. One, we had a much more civil political conference at USC this week. Mike Murphy was there, and Joel Benenson was there, and there was pretty broad agreement that Comey had a big impact. And I think that really probably did stop the momentum. I think Joel's right about that. But the Clinton campaign bears responsibility for the moment when they decided somehow or other that they were not going to have an economic argument, a comparative economic argument in case that they were going to prosecute in those Rust Belt states against the Republican nominee. You have to change so few votes to change the outcome of the election. The Obama model was there. There was a way to go after his business record, tie it to his economic policies, change 30,000 votes, 35,000 votes, and she's president of the United States.
Harold, seminal moment for you?
I agree with all of these things. I would add.
It's a uniter.
Well, but I mean, I think the Comey thing, there's no doubt. I don't think that there's any doubt when he won tonight, to Campbell's point and your point about the tape. I thought the night in which, I can't remember who performed, it might have been Jay-Z and Beyonce, who I'm fans of. But I watched that rally, then I watched Trump say, I don't have J-Lo or Beyonce or Jay-Z, it's just me and my family. And at that moment, it crystallized for me that he was the economic champion. He was a champion voice for middle-class America. And the momentum had stopped. And you could feel in the States and looking at some of the polling data that the movement was not what we wanted on her behalf.
Thank you, Secretary Ford. Mike Murphy, your seminal moment, please.
I'll give you a double one. I think the much heralded, much praised, including by me, Democratic convention in hindsight was about everything.
Mike, hold on 1 second. We got to go to break. It's a hard break, as we say in the TV business. We're going to come back, pick up with Mike Murphy right after this.
All right, we're back with a group of guests so nice that we wanted to have them on twice tonight on this special With All Due Respect finale. Mike Murphy, you were saying seminal moments, go.
The convention, the Hillary Clinton convention, much praised, including by me. But when you look back at it, it shows the head of the Democratic Party and Clinton messaging was not. It was a lot on bathrooms and identity, not a lot on spot welding and lost jobs. And second, when Trump attacked McCain on July 18th, 2015, and nothing happened bad to him. In fact, he went up a little. That was an early canary in the coal mine. It's going to be a very different kind of election.
Right. You were about to fight. You want to fight with Shrum, right?
I don't want to fight with him, but I think it's easy. You know, Comey is an easy punching bag. But if you actually rewind the tape, March of 2015, when we first learned about the server, when the New York Times did the first piece about the server, once that server story came out, that was it. I mean, there was a trustworthiness issue that continued throughout the campaign that was impossible for her to get away from. So I know that Comey is easy to sort of blame at the end, but she had that problem for about a year and a half as a result of her own making.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I don't disagree with that. That was the original sin. But if you talk about what affected the vote at the end, what was seminal in the sense of having an impact, I think it was first Comey, who brought the email issue alive again. And secondly, it was the fact that, as Mike said and I said earlier, there was no economic and jobs argument, particularly in those Rust Belt states. That's what Obama did to Romney, as you know, in 2012, and that was the model that should have been pursued here.
But she would have gotten out of trouble a lot better had she let the energy out of the lying, stinking, can't believe argument. Instead, they did. It was a huge mistake from the beginning, part of their culture, I'm afraid, where they just got into a defensive crouch and dug deeper. They never let the energy out of that thing. That set up, and I agree with Bob, it was the Comey event that froze the race, but ultimately, she kind of owns that problem.
All right. In this New York studio, I want to ask, we just asked about most seminal moment of 2016. This was also, by almost everyone's standards, an appalling campaign. So, Harold Ford Jr., what's the most appalling, disgusting, ridiculous, hard moment of the campaign, 2016?
The moment that offended me the most and I found most appalling was when he questioned the judge out of Indiana and suggested that no politician could take an oath of office and be trusted because every oath given would be predicated on their racial and ethnic makeup, meaning no black could be fair to anyone but blacks, whites to whites, Jews to Jews, Muslims to Muslims. I was so offended as someone that served in office and someone that respects people in office. But there were many. We could write a book on this one, and you guys might just do
most appalling. Dan, you spent a lot of this year appalled.
Yeah,
so,
but I want to say,
Judge Curiel?
I'm seconding Harold's because I feel like a lot of the other appalling moments were like, they felt like one-offs. They felt like he was popping off, but like you could kind of put it back in the bottle and say, okay, he's just. This one was an expression of an idea.
We didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about it.
Yeah, we didn't. The idea that.
And it was only for his own personal interest. There was no principle behind it whatsoever.
Right, but the idea that Harold just articulated was appalling.
It's a powerful moment when you have a junior senior agreement. Brown.
Well, I think for women, obviously, the tape. Yeah. I mean, the first question Megyn Kelly asked at the very first debate gave us a clue as to where we were headed. But when that tape came out, it was, you know, like a knife in your stomach. And I think for a lot of women, that they'll never get over that. But can I add one other thing?
Yeah.
Every time the media, cable news, took one of his rallies live early on in the campaign, and the culmination of the media coverage, that it became clear that they were going to cover him in the interest of ratings and not in the interest of journalism, was absolutely appalling.
So we got 2 votes for Judge Curiel, 1 for the Access Hollywood tape, and Jeff Zucker. Okay, and I
didn't name names.
We know what you were talking about. That's
Bob
fine.
would appalled you.
Out to L.A. Shrum, go. Most appalling.
Yeah, look, it started on the very first day when he came down that escalator and he said that Mexican immigrants were rapists. And it went on and on through the Khan family. The problem with it was appalling, but it was also fascinating and mesmerizing to the Clinton campaign, became their bright, shining object. And they ran a kind of one-dimensional argument that he was unfit to be president. Now, I happen to agree with that, but I live in Los Angeles.
Right.
They needed to make a broader argument.
So Bob basically thinks that the entire campaign was appalling, everything Donald Trump did, dating back even before 2016, all the way back to May of 2015.
No, I just said there were a number of events that occurred during that campaign on his part that were pretty appalling.
Mike, give me a most appalling moment in 2016. Go.
I'll lump them together. It was the debates becoming an applause meter Roman circus shit show. That was the worst moment of the whole campaign in the primary.
You can't say that on TV.
Whoa, yes, you can. Apparently you can. There it was.
Mildly
Mike Murphy, you know what's going to happen now? You know what's going to happen now? This show's going to go off the air because.
So there will be the last episode.
Who thought that we could get through 2.5 years without me uttering a profanity on the air? But Mike Murphy, on the last day.
What is the solution?
Go, Mike, go.
How do you fix this? Audience-less debates?
Absolutely, Dan. I think time to get the circus elements out of it and put them naked on a rock under lights in a tight shot and see what they know. Like the old days.
All right, Murphy trashing the circus, not okay with the people on this set. We love the circus on this show, and we love all of you.
And by the way, we love you too.
Even though these 2 blocks turned into a little bit of a fustercluck. Campbell, Dan, Harold, Bob. Actually, Murphy, you're going to stay on for a second, so because we love you. You were so nice that we love you. We want you on thrice. Your infinite wisdom and insight over the course of the show the last 2+ years. You're great. We love you. Great. Okay. When we come back, another round of WADR regulars. If you happen to be watching us in Washington, D.C., you can also listen to us on the radio at Bloomberg 99.1 FM. We'll be right back.
Got another round of guests for you. Alex Wagner, a CBS News correspondent, anchor and contributing editor to The Atlantic. Jim Rutenberg, media columnist for The New York Times. Oh. Yeah. Okay. In Washington, Democratic strategist, the co-founder of Purple Strategy, Steve McMahon, our partner throughout the cycle, and back with us in Los Angeles, the Republican strategist, Mike Murphy, still with us. Steve McMahon, start with you. Who is the one person most likely to stand in the way of Donald Trump's agenda, not counting Donald Trump himself, which would be too easy?
I actually think, and this may surprise you, I think it's Paul Ryan and the Republicans in Congress who probably are going to stand up to him relatively soon on infrastructure, and I suspect on a number of other matters that he proposes if he wants to pursue them. And so I don't really think it's going to require the Democrats in the first instance, because I think he's going to have a lot of problems with his own party.
He says, Ryan Wagner, what did he say you?
That's a good answer. I mean, I think the Republican establishment is going to prove to be a thorn in his side on a number of policy issues. I also think an economic populist like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, because it's so much of Trump's message in the coming months, could prove to be difficult for him.
Rutenberg, who's your nominee to stand up to Trump and slow him down or stop him?
This is very similar, but I would say Mitch McConnell. and sort of the group of donors who have spent so much money ensuring that American policy was pro-trade, pro-Chamber of Commerce sort of republicanism.
Right. Mike Murphy?
You know, I think it might be the lefty Democrats. I agree if Trump does want to start a trade war or something like that, then Mitch and Ryan will be a big obstacle. But somebody is going to audition to be the anti-Trump for 2020 and 2018 politics. And I think Bernie and Elizabeth Warren in the Democratic caucus in the Senate are both going to go for that.
Well, that's a pretty good place to pick up the next question that we had, which is the question about who has the greatest hope of being the focal point of the revival, if there's going to be one, of the Democratic Party. So who do you think, Mike, just starting with you, since you were just talking about those two populists, who do you think the single person is who might emerge?
Well, it's early to guess, but I think the big dynamics are going to be Elizabeth Warren and somebody, and the race will be who's going to be the somebody. And that's unclear now, but there's an opportunity. I mean, Trump is unpopular enough, understatement of the decade, in the Democratic world. I mean, out here in California, they're beating their dream catchers into weapons. They're so mad. That's going to be the jump ball to get that slot, the anti-Trump, and that's worth a lot in Democratic politics.
Steve McMahon, you're a Democrat. What do you think?
Well, I think it could be, obviously Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are going to fight for the control of the progressive wing of the party. I think there are a lot of Democrats who are looking for sort of new leadership. And I think Cory Booker and Kamala Harris and some of the up-and-coming stars in our party who haven't gotten quite as much attention because they've been surrounded by, Barack Obama and the Clintons are now going to be able to break out.
Wagner?
I think new is imperative. I think we should definitely look towards the Senate. I think the incoming female senators, Kamala Harris, Catherine Cortez Masto, Maggie Hassan, very strong. Look to them to be a new leader, sort of generation of Democratic leadership.
Rudy?
Okay, so as number 4 here, I think I would say Harris, but more importantly, maybe someone that we're not thinking about, because that party needs new leadership that's going to have some of the progressive stance of Sanders, of Warren, but maybe a new, younger face.
And none of you said a business person. We saw the head of Starbucks, Mr. Schultz, stepping down. Does anybody think that the Democratic Party's best bet might be to fight back against a Republican, now a Republican business person, with a Democratic business person?
I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to do that because economics is going to be is going to be message number 1, and I think a more conventional model of Democrat will be attractive to a wing of the party. But I think ultimately Trump's populist message is undeniable, and there's going to be a deep desire, I think, from the grassroots of the Democratic Party to have a real quote-unquote fighter.
And I would say he's also that rare businessman who can play off a populist persona, right? I mean, that's not every business person can do that. Most can't.
Hey, Murphy, Mark Cuban?
Yeah.
Mark Cuban?
Maybe. I think it's interesting to listen to my Democratic friends here because I'm hearing candidates who are very strong in the identity politics wing of the Democratic Party, but that's exactly what got them into trouble this time. Who is the young generational populist? Maybe it's a Cuban. I would normally say it could be a governor, but there really aren't any Democratic governors left. That's the vacuum they've got, and they've got to figure out how to solve it and not go back to the same old stuff.
Steve, do you think Democrats need to just basically adopt the McConnell model of no compromise, no work with Trump, just fight on everything? Or are there places you think Democrats should agree with Donald Trump?
Well, I actually think if he comes forward with an infrastructure bill of the scope that he's suggesting, Democrats should run to embrace it, and he should pass it with Democratic votes. I think the Democratic Party would be well advised to fight for the people, as Mike suggests, who are middle class and who are struggling to make it and who want an economy that works for them. And if Donald Trump is willing to put forward a proposal that helps them do that, they should support him, and they should fight him on every single thing that doesn't.
Let's speed through on a question we asked our last round of guests. First, Rutenberg, seminal moment of 2016.
You get to go first.
Seminal moment. And now I'm first. I'd rather be fourth on this one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can't always get what you want, dude.
Can
I talk about it in the media frame since I'm the media columnist? So from my lens, a seminal moment, there were so many, and there's some obvious ones, is when Donald Trump gave an election night press conference during the primaries, and it was carried live by all of the networks, and he used it to do an infomercial on his brand of steaks. Yeah. I think that was like a kind of symbolically a
Put that right in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, right there.
Alex?
I think this was not acknowledged as such. First debate, Donald Trump was actually winning the beginning of that first debate because he took Hillary Clinton on the issue of TPP and has said nobody believes that this is how you're going to govern. Nobody believes your message on the economy and on trade. And that was the nugget of his argument that I think won him the presidency.
And Steve McMahon.
So with the wind at his back and headed toward a first or second place finish in New Hampshire, Marco Rubio inexplicitly turned into a robot during that debate 2 days before New Hampshire, which not only cost him his opportunity to take down Donald Trump, but it's probably the last moment that anybody had a chance to do it. And he was the last guy who could have, and he froze.
That is, as we say in New Hampshire, a wicked good answer. Pretty big moment. All right, Steve McMahon, Mike Murphy, Jim Rutenberg, Alex Wagner, thank you all.
Thank you.
Hey. Great to have you in here. All right, next up, a very, very special Super Duper with all due reflect right after this. With all due respect, with all due respect, with all due respect,
With all due respect, with all due respect, with all due respect. Over the life of this show, we've always prided ourselves on covering the nexus of politics and culture. So as part of our finale, we reached out to some of our friends and fans of this show from the entertainment world. Jeff Goldblum, Jeff Daniels, Julianne Moore, Adam Scott, and Savannah Guthrie. And we asked them to help us with a little WADR highlight reel that we put together in the spirit of Auld Lang Syne. Hope you enjoy it.
The year was 2014. The news media was, well, you know what the news media was. And there was a need for something different. So Bloomberg gave us, with all due respect, over 2 years, Mark Halperin and John Heilman would do 526 episodes, cover 2 conventions, report from 12.5 debates, and eat an uncountable number of pork tenderloins. As the 2016 presidential campaign came into full swing, the show grew from a half hour to a full hour. MSNBC picked it up, and their official Vine account drew more than 1,800 followers. By the way, very, very few people know that this theme music for the show was composed by Rizzo. That's why John tweeted it 77 times. Anyway, by the end of the cycle, only Hillary Clinton had refused to be interviewed on WADR, and look what happened to her. But all the other presidential candidates were, as they say, down with the program. Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz.
Oh, sweet.
Donald Trump.
This is thick ice.
John Kasich, Lindsey Graham.
Whoa, whoa, Yankee boy.
Even Evan McMullin, for heaven's sakes.
Did you ever kill anybody?
Being a guest on With All Due Respect was like being in a movie for the first time. It was exciting, a little confusing. And when it was all over, you asked yourself, am I getting paid for this?
I don't know what the you're talking about. His tiny hands?
The producers always made sure that interviews were conducted at the highest professional standard.
A little on his face, but again, the clothes, spotless.
Very impressive.
Got a napkin.
Oh, look at this.
Oh, my goodness.
With piercingly insightful research, they designed segments that brought out the best of everyone who came on the show, gently pushing us out of our comfort zones.
Right. I'm a wino. I just drink wine.
Because this is what the political world wanted.
Okay, let's see.
Like all shows on cable news, With All Due Respect was not without its criticism, and sometimes the critics made good points.
I've never known of a greater oxymoron than you two guys having a show entitled With All Due Respect.
Hey, I came up with that name, Senator, with all due respect. Other people had some alternative ideas for the name.
It's like the Gong Show.
The interviews did not always go as planned, which means viewers never saw clips like this one.
Too much power? I think that if you're going to spend this entire interview trying to make us make comparisons to the real world, you're going to find yourself very frustrated.
In the end, it was a show that always stayed hungry.
And everything goes better with Captain Crunch.
Watching With All Due Respect could make you feel a lot of things. It could make you laugh and cry at the same time.
Team Cruz needs to win it as much as Jon Snow needs a fresh pair of pants. That's also funny.
Are you crying? One thing we'll always remember is how Mark and John made the most of their state-of-the-art set.
We don't just threaten to throw people off balconies around here. Whoops, sorry.
Mark and John always took everything in moderation.
Drinking game. I enjoy him. I enjoy this guy.
Credit where it's due, they had a pretty cool green screen operation.
For the brouhaha in Brewtown.
I'm the one who castrates pigs.
We promise to keep it down tonight. Also, countless terrific correspondence.
A fellow named Nick Clegg.
He's very young. He's only 17.
And you could tell that a lot of resources went into bringing in the foremost experts in the political arena.
Stand clear of the negative attacks, please.
Now, 24 days after the presidential election, Mark and John are appearing on their final regularly scheduled episode of With All Due Respect. With the campaign over, a new chapter is going to begin in this ever-changing media landscape. And no, they haven't told me if they're writing another book.
We'll let you know about that, Jeff. Thanks again to everyone who helped with that piece, most especially our whacked out, possibly stoned, and definitely brilliant core of producers and editors who, long before that piece, did so much to make WADR unique and special. We will be right back.
And so concludes our 526th and very final episode of With All Due Respect. There are way too many people deserving of our gratitude to thank right here, but we do want to say a special thank you to Bloomberg and also to MSNBC and all the co-hosts and the guests, especially the people right here. Thank you all. And to the great producing team that put the show on the air every night for over 2 years.
And of course, sending our biggest gratitude to all you viewers out there who tuned in day after day, week after week, putting up with all of our nonsense. We'll be back on Inauguration Week for a curtain call of sorts. But for now, one last time, we say to you, everybody, 1, 2, 3, sayonara.
526. 526.
That would have been incredible.
526 episodes.
That's a lot of shows to bank. DVD. Thank you, man. You guys were on a lot.
526.
Very helpful.
Last 2 weeks.
I'm Nina Melendez, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with your first word news. Meetings continue at Trump Tower as the president-elect and the transition team fills out his cabinet. Among those on tap today, former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, Encima Global founder David Malpass, former UN Ambassador John Bolton, and North Dakota Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp. Goldman Sachs President Gary Cohn will return for a second meeting with Trump this weekend. He's been mentioned as a possibility for several jobs, including budget chief. Michigan's election board is deadlocked on Trump's request to prevent a recount. It starts next week unless the courts intervene. Meantime, in Wisconsin, one is already underway, though Trump supporters have filed a federal lawsuit trying to prevent it. And in Pennsylvania, Trump is asking a court to dismiss Green Party candidate Jill Stein's request for a recount. Mr. Trump's transition team has released a list of world leaders who spoke to the president-elect today. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien called Trump to offer his congratulations. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte also called the president-elect to offer support. The presidents of Taiwan and Afghanistan are also said to have spoken with Trump today. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nina Melendez. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Technology is next.